Birch, aspen, poplar. How do you know what these trees are? Again, not a rhetorical question.
Science class.
Hearing some things like bark, maybe some leafage, foliage, things like that, right? Why I want to offer this up as a starting point as well as a, let's say, a keystone or cornerstone of how you can also think about trans identity is for the exact answers you just gave in this room. So when we think about indigenous lifeways, and again, I will be very upfront and say I am not indigenous. I am white of European and British Island ancestry, descendancy, as well as Scandinavia, still figuring out what that means for me and where I connect with those ancestral roots. However, when I think about myself and also some of my indigenous relatives, some of you who are in this room and who have taught me so much, so I will say chimigwich to you for that. I want to also recognize that when we talk about trees like this and we think about poplar, birch trees in general, sometimes people can't always see them or know them from a distance, right? Because they look the same. When we talk about indigenous lifeways or we talk about indigenous knowledge ways, this is what I'm talking about specifically with trans identity. Because although for myself, I might look and present masculine, and from a distance, if I was a tree, you might say, oh, that's a birch tree over there. But you might come up closer and find out that actually I am a poplar. Right? It's when you actually get to know me. Sorry, all puns intended right now. That, and I'm going to just shut the screen off now too since we're done with that. But it's when you actually get to know somebody that you actually get to understand those depths of who they are as a person. And so from a distance, while we might look different or we might look as one certain way to people, the important thing is that we actually interact with those folks in our circles, in our communities, and we learn who that person is and not who we think they are. So just as you wouldn't go around calling all poplar trees birches, don't go around calling everybody the same gender identity just because from the outside they might look one way, even though personally that's not who they are. So, without further ado, I'm going to be done talking and rambling here because I can yap. My students, if I'm looking around to see if any of y'all in the room, hi, hey, hello, they know I can yap and they hear that on a daily basis and they don't want to hear me talk. We want to hear these folks talk. So if y'all would do us the courtesy of just going down the panel and knowing me, we'll start with Nomi.
Birch, please.
Just give us your name, what your pronouns are, and then if you'd be so kind as to share a little bit about who you are and what you do in this Twin Ports community.
Sure. Hi, my name's Nomi Ostrander. My pronouns are she, they. I have sort of two roles, maybe more. One, I'm a professor at UMD in social work. And two, I'm a therapist. I do a lot of sex therapy, I do a lot of gender therapy, work with a lot of different relationship structures. So I work with a lot of people who have diverse relationships, diverse genders, diverse orientations. And I love that work, and like those two jobs really feed into each other really well. And yeah, that's pretty much what I do around the Twin Ports.
And I'm Kathy Hermes. My pronouns are she, they. I work with Harm Reduction Sisters in Duluth, and we're just there helping people make whatever size positive change they want to make in their lives on whatever day they're considering that. Prior to that, I did queer youth support work through Lutheran Social Service here over in Duluth, and also have been a science teacher in the past.
My name is Bird. My pronouns are they, them. I am a community organizer. I got my start in organizing through the Duluth punk scene. And then when I'm not doing like punk organizing, I work with Outfront Minnesota, who is an LGBT advocacy organization. And my coworker Chance is actually out tabling if you guys are interested. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Bonjour, my name is Khayman Goodsky. My pronouns are he, him, she, her. I'm the Indigenous First Coordinator at the Indigenous First Gift Shop at ICO. I've been there for about 3 years. Before I worked with Kathy at Together for Youth for a while. And I just love hanging out with artists and being around my two-spirit relatives.
I'm Courtney Cochran, they, them pronouns. I have a couple roles in the community. I think the role that I'm embodying the most right now is as an herbalist and farmer. We have a table out in the hallway for our little farm called Alseth Acres Apothecary, and really kind of our specialty is like gender affirming herb services and trying to fill the gaps that Western medicine needs with really community support and herb support, and then also have a history in the community of grant writing and community organizing in a lot of different queer settings.
We will also have one other person joining our panel in just a little bit once she gets here. She, correct?
She, they.
Wanted to make sure I got her pronouns correctly. ThatQueerIsa, for those of you who know of them or have seen her perform, quite a lovely human. And once they get here, she'll just easily, seamlessly join us. So no worries there. And I'll just be over here posing questions to y'all, and y'all get to chat and share where you're at, share what's going on. So first and foremost, and this is not like a go down the line type of a thing. This is a popcorn answer as you will, answer as you feel called to. We're going to be having this panel for about 40-ish minutes or so. I want to recognize that time, just that way people can also go and check out the tables that we have and also talk to our panelists afterward. The way we're going to run this is we're not going to do any Q&A after the panel is done. And the purpose of that is to create some space for folks to actually gather in community and not just stay in this fun seating. Trust me, if I could rearrange this room, I would. So we know that TDOR is hard for a lot of folks, especially those of us in community, those of us who have people we have lost, or those of us who have oftentimes been at the margins. And sometimes we tend to stay home or even skip events like this just because of the drain that it can be from a year-long experience. So what are the ways that y'all are caring for yourselves on this day? And how does your grief show up in these moments? If you be kind too, you can also share about your joys, because we don't want to just dwell on the grief, y'all.
I mean, I don't know. Okay, the popcorning is a little weird.
Do you want structure?
It might be better to have a little bit structure.
Based on that very long pause, we might need some structure.
Yeah. But I could definitely start if we want. But
Okay,
so,
Mary, thank you.
yeah, I definitely grieve in the way of like isolating myself on these kinds of days. Like, but the way that I'm like trying to show up and care for myself is like trying to embrace the fact that like we don't owe anybody anything today. Like really, like something that I think our phones unfortunately do to us is make us feel like we need to be accessible to all people 24/7. And I think on a day that, you know, has so much grief, I think it is important to be like, I don't have to be on my phone today, and I should just be around community rather than trying to just be what everybody needs me to be. And so I definitely think that is just, it's uncomfortable to do that, but to be able to have that like time to just like process and be with yourself is like, it's very impactful.
Yeah, I'll jump in. This is sort of that like therapist thing where you just wait until somebody's too awkward to say something. No, but like I think grief is like a tricky bitch, right? Like it shows up when it wants to, it shows up how it wants to, and so, you know, folks may not be feeling a whole lot of grief today, or maybe they are. They may feel grief in 2 days. So it's so tough to sort of know that, and like we sometimes think we can, I think, prepare for it, and you know, I think anytime I prepared for grief, it still hurts. So, but I think in terms of like taking care of self and thinking about joy, like this is an event, right, that brings some joy, right? I knew that today I would get to see a lot of people that maybe I don't get to see that often, and so that's wonderful. And so I think like turning into community is super helpful. And yeah, it's just been wonderful seeing folks today.
She makes an entrance.
Yes! Welcome!
Just no, forgot my heels, so wearing Crocs to me.
I saw that the moment you rounded the side.
I went to the wrong area. And I was like, oh my gosh, where do I go? So,
Oh, no.
We're here.
Do you want to just introduce yourself quick? We did name, pronouns, just who you are, what you do in the Twin Ports.
Yes. Well, I'm Isa, or better known as ThatQueerIsa in the Twin Ports. I'm a local drag queen. I'm one of the show directors at the Duluth Flame, and I also am the bingo host at the Mint Club.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know.
That's right.
Your bingo caller.
Yes.
And so we're talking just right now about what ways are you caring for yourself on this day, and how does grief show up, or also how does your joy show up in these moments? And right now we're popcorn paneling. After this, we'll just we'll start with Nomi. We'll go down the line. If you don't have anything to say, you can just nod or
Yes.
pass.
I'm good at that.
But yeah, anybody else want to share just how are you taking care of yourself?
Well, I'll share that I'm very good at deferring grief. And, you know, we're in some grievous times right now. And from just working through all the years, I actually have disciplined myself to use this particular event to start tapping off the grief. And so for me, the community of the street side gathering is a really, really important part of that. I pull the candle display together, and so I get to know all those people that are on those candles, and I continue to burn them in my windows, taking one down each night, being thoughtful about them, and when that other grief creeps in that you were trying to keep at bay. And not always, but usually I'm pretty well grieved out by the time I'm taking down the last of those candles. And I'd say on the backside of that, joy is just being outdoors, and actually it was kind of cool being out in that little bitty snow we had tonight.
I'll just add, like, I think I don't often take time, and I think this is true for a lot of folks who maybe are showing up here. I don't often take time to feel my own grief. Like, I tend to feel everyone else's first and, like, hold everyone else before me. And so a lot of times my grief shows up as things like exhaustion, headaches, back pain, and I tend to notice my body before my feelings. And so, like, that's something as I've gotten older and gotten more in touch with my own body and, like, rhythms of nature, I've tried to create room to, like, hear that and feel that, because often I'm going to feel something in my body because I'm not giving myself the time to actually feel the emotions under it or connect to that. And so, like, today I ended up having so many things on my schedule and removing all of them except for this, and just spending a lot of time, like, sitting out in that slushy mixture and, like, feeling like it was a really beautiful thing that nature was grieving with us, and, like, just spending a lot of time out in the woods and with animals and trying to actually feel what was happening and, like, hear how I was feeling. So I think that's how my grief shows up and how I try to make room to tend to it.
Yeah, I think grief is a really funny thing, because being a queer joy person, we go through so many stages of grief. Like, there's so many, like, I think I was 12 and I had already grieved like 5 family members. So there hasn't really been a year where I haven't lost someone, but I feel like the last 5 years particularly, we've lost a lot of community members, and I think that's really hard being out there. You know what I mean? Like, being openly in your identity and losing people who are also very open in their identities. I self-isolate a lot too. I don't tell people about my grief, but I take that time and I go drive up the North Shore, I listen to my favorite music, and I go pray by the lake. And I cry. I do cry a lot. And I think as a parent, teaching my young child it's okay to grieve, it's okay to feel those things. So sometimes I do cry, like while making dinner, and there's no shame in that. There's no shame in feeling what we need to feel, whether that's, anger, because it is really hard to be in this community and lose so many people year after year. also hope that one day we won't lose as many people. We won't have to attend so many funerals, so many memorials. And hopefully one day there won't be as many candles in the window. That's where I stand with grief. Totally just heavy now.
Well, let's change the topic then. So some of y'all talked a little bit about this, and just kind of bringing it right back to this for a moment. And again, now we'll do the down the line thing. I roll my eyes a little because I always love doing just the talk as you will, but I recognize that I challenge structural norms wherever I can.
Yes. Do it.
So,
I'm going to push back, though, and I think you should name somebody different. I don't want to start for yourself.
okay.
That's a good point.
So
That's too
then,
much pressure.
fine. Courtney came to mind. So,
Good.
Courtney, if you would start, what?
What's happening?
Just share with us what are your joys right now?
Oh, okay. Yeah, just non-specific, just what's bringing joy.
Yeah, it's bringing you
Yeah.
joy.
I think my community is bringing a lot of joy. There was like a phase of COVID where I felt very isolated on our little farm, just me and my partner and our animals and whatever person was sleeping in our woods that week. And then as we kind of slowly started to emerge after like the peak of COVID, there's so many amazing queer folks in our community. I just made so many new connections and like lifelong friendships in the last 2 years. And I've lived here over 15 years, and I definitely was in a phase going into the pandemic where I was like, I'm locking down who I'm letting in. I like know my community. I've been here long enough. And then like when I reemerged, I was like, oh my God, look at all of these like powerful queer, trans, two-spirit folks who moved here. And I just felt so much joy in like building relationship with those folks, even in one-on-one ways, and just the power that happens like when we gather and form community has been really my biggest joy. And like having this powerful chosen family that I'm like, I have 10 different people I can reach out to anytime I'm having a hard day. That burden doesn't fall on any one of us. We're all like in this circle together. So yeah.
Just bring it down my way, Khayman. If you don't have anything to share, you don't have anything you want to share, you can feel free to pass, and we'll wrap around back to Isa.
Yeah, what brings me joy is honestly my kid. I mean, not to be cheesy, but there's the next generation that's coming. And we're teaching them things we didn't want to carry anymore. And like, how do we live life in a good way? I have a really good community of friends right now, and I don't know, I kind of like the internet because I can connect with other two-spirit people, and they may not be here, but I made a really powerful connection a couple of years ago, and then he invited me out to a two-spirit powwow in California, and so I did a crazy thing. I took all my friends and we went, and like, you know, so to be able to connect to other people who are going through the same things that I am going through as like an Indigenous person, as a two-spirit person, so knowing that I have friends and family that I can rely on. And the snow, honestly, the snow made me really happy today because it's November, we haven't had snow, and so my body's been stuck in limbo between fall and wintertime because there's things we should be doing already. So I listened to The Cure and I drove in the snow and I came here. I feel pretty good.
Yes.
For me, like what brings me joy is like punk music, the punk scene, just everything. Like most specifically down in Minneapolis, there is a trans femme punk band called Slog, and I've just had them nonstop. And there's just something about like listening to like this hardcore music about politics and just like sung by queer people for queer people. Like I was down at Doll Brawl, which was like a trans only like punk night, and it was just like those kinds of environments it was just so much joy to be like rough with other trans people. Like it was so much fun to just like let your queerness out in that way.
And I find a lot of joy in in being alone, being outdoors, wandering and putzing in my yard and garden are important. Deepening my relationship with Gracie the squirrel is great. Right now, there's 3 bears who are in my alley almost every night. That's a burst of joy watching those characters. And then I'm not always alone. I like to hang out events that Mary Plaster plans, if you know her as a local artist. Duluth All Souls Night having been her most recent production. And the vision of the gigantic light-up moose puppet that she and others made is one big giant joy agent for me.
It's funny, you got Gracie the squirrel, I've got Walker the squirrel.
They should be.
Maybe they're friends, I don't know. I've really enjoyed the Brad, the sheep adventures the last few weeks. That's been joyful. Like, it sounds cheesy, but part of my joy is the fact that you all are here, right? And that, like, again, we can see sort of this community, and, you know, I know maybe half of you I don't, and that's exciting. So those bring me joy. Trash TV always brings me joy. It's like a John Bonet documentary coming up that I'm so excited for. So like these things bring me joy. I love playing music. I love playing punk music. That always brings me joy. So I think that there's a lot of spaces for joy, and I think part of having that joy is also putting boundaries on things that are going to be buzzkills, right? Whether that's like, you know, not looking at my phone or not looking at the news or not looking at people who don't have my best interests at heart.
Lisa girl, you got it? What you got?
Well, something that brings me joy is honestly being able to be authentically who I am down here in the Twin Ports. It's not necessarily easy at all times, you know, just walking around, you might get something, you know, but just showing that we're visible, that brings me joy. Like, I was walking through the college trying to get here looking like this, all these college students like, what? Yeah, no, it brings me joy, definitely. But also just being able to perform, as you know, I'm a drag queen, I'm not your average girl. So I like to be extra, I like to be able to perform to my favorite music and really be able to bring stories to life with performances and all that. That's what really brings me joy.
And if y'all didn't see her perform at a drag show a couple weeks ago, first of all, you missed out. Second of all, you should come next year because this is a promise that she's coming back.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
there's that.
Yes.
Nomi, I know you pushed back on some things, and that's perfectly lovely, fine for me. Because I'm also going to now. Oh.
That was exciting.
That was.
That was an adventure. Because now I'm going to push back just a little, and we're going to start with you on this question, just because I know what. Fine. Well, it's because I know we've had these conversations, so I want to give our other panelists some time as well to like think about this question a little bit in case they haven't had a lot of time to consider it. But how do you consider or think about resilience? How do you build it for yourself? What does that look like? What lessons have you learned that you'd share with folks?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question. Like, I could think about this question very clinically. Again, just from the work that I do, I think maybe the best definition I've ever heard was sort of the ability to take a punch and keep going. But I think we all have resiliency and resilient practices that are very unique to ourselves. You know, I could share what mine are, and that might resonate with some of you, and some of you would be like, that doesn't sound resilient, or like, that doesn't sound like it could do much for me, and that's fine. But like, you all have your own, and I think it's a lot about intentionality and sort of what you're putting your attention towards for building resilience and for building your ability to sort of take things on. Like, I'll say one of the things that I do a lot is like, I like to look, for example, at a week. So like this week here, I knew this day was what it was, and so I do a lot of bookending on things, and so it's like, I'm going to leave myself with good energy going into something, and I'm going to give myself a soft landing after something. So I do a lot of that. I just sort of think a lot about like the energy that I can take into a space, and I want to just make that as positive as I can, especially for heavy topics. You know, because I know that if I'm rushing or if I'm stressed about something, I'm going to come in and I'm just going to be, you know, not a nice person, or seem like not a nice person. So I think a lot about sort of that, like how just the energy that I bring, and the spoons that I leave myself with, and try to be as intentional about that as I can. Obviously, sometimes you can't be, but yeah, I think that's one of my main practices.
I think it's important to acknowledge and honor the frustration and rage that builds up as life goes on around us, and it often tries to erase us. And so I break shit, sometimes solo, but sometimes in community. I have to be deliberate about including community sometimes, but I will break shit upon request too. So I'll offer that to all of you. Number 1, corn nuts with hammers. Number 2, hard-boiled eggs with wiffle ball bats. And number 3, inexpensive plates from Goodwill, just with your own power. And if you do share that with somebody, joint release of rage is like awesome. And then you're gonna talk about what just happened, and then before you know it, you're gonna be plotting things, and then you're gonna feel like capable of leaning into the things that frustrate you and enrage you. And I'm gonna show my elder status here. I've heard tell of collections of people called polycules. I think I know what that means, but I'm going to propose something a little bit different perhaps, and that would be queer cross-gen cules. I think part of resiliency as a community is to see your community, youth, melders, and elders. Melders being those characters in between the youth and elders. We're missing a lot, not being deliberate about that.
I definitely understand what you mean by like collective rage, because resiliency is like I kind of have like a love and hate relationship with resiliency. The way I look at it is it's kind of like, it is so hard, but sometimes like what comes out of it is so worth it. And I want to share a little story. So like, I was in a punk band and we were called Roadside Casino, and I remember like we were very queer. Like it was, we dressed in drag, like our music was not, it did not sound like any other punk bands, and we would get like turned away for venues because we were told like we weren't the right fit. And then when you'd see what kind of bands they book, it would be like cis band after cis band after cis band. And like there would even be times where we were kicked off of a lineup because we were told we weren't like hardcore enough for these other punk bands. And then when you look at cis band after cis band after cis band, and like so much of that had happened to us where it's just like, okay, well, we're going to just kind of do it ourselves. And with that, like Duluth has one of the queerest punk scenes I've probably ever witnessed myself. Like with having that, like with just in the face of like these venues not wanting a queer band, or these bands like not, like whether or not they explicitly said it, like not, like purposely not having the only trans band on the lineup, we had to just do it ourselves. And like now, like Roadside's not a band anymore, but there is like 5 active like queer safe punk houses in Duluth where just like most of the bands who play are trans bands. And I think it's just like, yeah, it's like, it was like a pain in the ass to get there, but now like we have a sustained queer punk scene, and I think it's just like, it makes like the resiliency just like, I don't know, I think it's just the perfect example of it.
Sorry, I'm just in awe. Pretty cool panel. I think resiliency is a pretty powerful word. Just coming from a Native perspective, we're also fed the idea of like being resilient, being strong, being stoic. Whatever you do, think of 7 generations in the future. So we're always with that mindset, and I always think we should be here to be doing good things, good lasting things, not just for like ourselves, but for future generations. And like what Kathy said is a lot of my resiliency comes from hanging out with my elders, from spending time with them, from having that solid connection of trust, love, didn't have past generations looking out for me. And I want to be in that spot where future generations could say, you know, our ancestors really took care of us. And that's just what resiliency means for me.
I feel like I think of resiliency in a little bit of a different way maybe than some folks have said. For me, like, resiliency is really how am I like offering myself the resources to be able to show up, both for myself, my family, my chosen family, my community. I think of like building resilience as like resourcing my nervous system and like my heart center, kind of like how am I feeding myself and caring for myself in ways that allow me to show up. And I think that looks like a couple different ways. For me, often that is like really knowing about the land that I'm on, the history of that land, as well as the like plants and animals of that land. Like, for me, I find a lot of safety in relationship with plants and like knowing a lot about the plants that surround me and the animals that surround me, and feeling like I always have kind of those like plant spirits to reach out to. And so a lot of my like resilience practice is like literally just like sitting and like having conversations with plants and getting to know them. And like some of that is like bookish studying herbs and plants and plant ID, but a lot of it is just like sitting with the energy of plants and getting to know them, so then anytime I need a resource in the world, I can like ask that plant for support. Also like literally physically nourishing myself. I think that's been like a journey from like a kid who grew up as like a food shelf kid to like really learn about like how do you grow food, how do you nourish yourself in a really beautiful way. And so gardening and like canning and food preservation has been a really big part of my like resilience journey and like learning how to care for my body. And then also like having mentors has been a really, really major thing in my life. I don't feel like I often like was handed down a lot of the things I would have hoped to enter my adulthood with from my bio family. I don't think that those messages and like lessons were very clear often, and so like finding mentors in my adulthood has been really, really key to me. And some of those folks have been queer and trans and some haven't, and I think just having those folks who you can really turn to has made a really big difference in my resiliency and being able to like talk to folks across many generations. And sometimes those are like peer mentors, but really do feel like elders are a really important part of that, especially for folks who maybe didn't get some of those lessons in their bio family too, or don't have those resources in their bio family. I'll also say that I do have some resources in my bio family, and I have this picture of my grandma in a snowsuit in the 80s on a snowmobile in the Canadian wilderness with a pot of chili between her legs. And I often look at that picture as like a like you can do anything resilience mantra, like this like traditional 50s housewife like strapped in the Canadian wilderness on a snowmobile carrying chili around. So that picture I think just is like a tie to me to some of the positive things in my ancestry and my family.
Well, I love that. First of all, I'm a grandma's person, hands down, the pot of chili. I love that.
Yeah.
For me, being resilient, having resiliency, and it's personally for me, if I don't like something that's going on or how I'm treated, I go back and try to fix the issue, regardless of how uncomfortable or how tough or how scary it may be, just because, you know, we deserve better as queer people, as trans people. We all deserve the world. We're amazing people. We're talented. We're beautiful. We all have something unique to offer. So I want to have all that just so I can show people, you know, we are here. Point blank period. Okay, we're not going anywhere. That's why I keep going back and I fight those issues that I want to fight. Because if we don't have representation, honestly, I feel like it's hard for us to move forward. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to have those people who are ready to advocate, educate, and all those things for us to make sure that we are taken care of. So, you know, I like to look at my resiliency as in that way. being able to go back and fight and, you know, attack those issues, you know, with the eating toys, of course. But, you know, attack those issues and make sure we're good.
Beautiful. So, Isa, the next question we're gonna start with you, if that's okay. Which is thinking about what sources of strength do you draw from, and are there any daily practices you have or practices you want to share with others? I want to give you a moment just to think about that, because I also wanted to just make one note in the room that I absolutely love that we have kids playing.
Mm-hmm.
Me too.
Yep.
It's bringing me a lot of joy. So thank you for bringing your little ones, and thank you for just having them here with us. Isa.
Okay, I was like,
It's all you, girl.
Okay.
I know, that was like the weirdest way of...
I was trying to see your eyes, but I can't see far, so, you know.
tossing you something.
Yes. So some sources that I pull my strength from, honestly, when there's specific situations that happen, like I mentioned, that I don't like, I like to be able to stand up. That is one of my strengths that I kind of pull from. When you go through certain situations, it's kind of like a fire underneath you. It makes you want difference. It makes you want to be treated better and in a different way. That's one of the sources that I pull from. But honestly, you know, just having my close queer friends and family, being able to have them, having their support, make sure I'm in check so I'm not acting too crazy. Because, you know, you gotta fight the advocacy, but you gotta make sure you're okay. You gotta make sure you're not doing too much. But being able to have your family and friends to be able to make everything feel level and equal, I would say that those are kind of my couple main sources of strength.
We'll go down the line. You'll be last, Nomi.
Oh, good.
So, Courtney, same question for you.
Yeah, I think a lot of the strength I draw is from community. Like, I've lived in this area for almost 16 years now, and like, this is a scrappy place to live. Like, we live in the tundra, we don't see the sun, and people here, like, have resilience, like, wired into them by our environment. And I've seen our community fight so hard for each other and, like, really achieve some things that we didn't think were possible because of that. Both in, like, personal and family ways, but as well as, like, community change. Like, I've seen so many things happen in this community that power holders said couldn't happen, right? Like, people repeatedly said these things could not happen, and like, our community will fight. Our community, like, is so scrappy and tough. And I think also, like, part of that brings me a lot of strength is, like, people aren't just, like, tough and scrappy, but they're also, like, soft and gentle often in our community. And I don't experience that in a lot of communities where folks can hold both, where folks can have that really, like, soft open-heartedness and that really, like, scrappy fight for each other nature. I think the way that we're programmed as humans is often either, like, fight or love, and I see our community do a lot of both, like, mixed in this beautiful way, and that brings me a lot of strength and hope.
So I draw a lot of strength from my family. I think anytime I was struggling with something, I would go to my grandpa, and he would sit with me and he would talk with me about stories, about his experiences, about growing up as a young Native man on the Iron Range, where it wasn't safe to be a young Native man. In some cases, it's still not safe to be a young Native man out there. And I draw a lot of strength from my mom. And when I really struggle with my own internal gender identity, I reach out to my two-spirit friends and my queer community. There's a lot of beautiful people out there that are worth connecting to and worth meeting. And I just find strength in memories, I feel like. And a lot of times I can remember, like, the exact moment when people are telling me that they love me, or like that they're glad that I'm still here. And then I think of the future, and I think the future, it can seem kind of dark, but I picture, like, my son and my nieces growing up and, like, still being resilient and strong and still having their, like, goofy little characters and traits, and that's really where I draw my strength from. So.
I I feel like when it comes to like organizing and staying like motivated for that, I find a lot of my strength from trans women, trans femmes specifically, especially within the punk scene and more specifically Riot Girl. It is very like heteronormative and very good at ignoring trans women entirely. And so when it comes to organizing, I always have like just everything I've learned from trans women just like front and center, because that is how I should be proceeding. But like personally with my strength, I would have to say it's like my friends. I have a very conservative family who like does not accept me. I've come out to them every year for the past 6 years, and still it does not matter. But since moving here and since having like a core group of friends, I'm kind of been able to be unapologetically me, to the point where I'm like, no, I am Bird. Like, I'm going home for Christmas and I'm like, no, I am Bird. Like, and so I think like, yeah, just my chosen family has done so much for me.
And I draw strength from paying attention to groundbreakers, studying up on them, hanging out within earshot of them. I think about our groundbreakers around sexuality, many of whom are still alive, from whom we can hear firsthand stories if we find ourselves in the same spaces. I think about the people who navigated through the AIDS crisis, the Reagan era, ACT UP. Like, yeah, if I had a whole bunch of ACT UP pants in my wardrobe, man, I'd be a force. But I love learning, their tactics, because I think they're very relevant today. I think we're gonna page backwards through that book and use some of that stuff again, and then and learning for young kids. And I had a front row seat to that, working along with Khayman, with Together for You, and learning stuff from Khayman too. Like, Khayman taught me how to point with my lips. In particular situations, but just, yeah, being with young kids, because they're the pioneers on gender, right? And they're indignant, and they're right, but they're largely powerless. So being there and hearing their pure, raw estimations of the world and how gender should be untouched by other people, it should just be able to come through you in the way it's meant to. That is powerful to be around. But it's also heartbreaking to see them bear the pain of all the binary supremacists who try to shut them and others of us down.
I feel like I'm going to repeat some stuff that others have said. I think at the foundation, I have a really strong belief in myself, and I feel like I've survived a lot of shit, and I've been fine and I figured it out. And so I have a lot of trust that I can always figure it out. That if something awful happens, I'll always figure it out. There's a story about a bird landing on a branch and sort of whether or not the bird has a fear of the branch breaking, but the bird's faith is in its wings and not in the branch. And so I feel like, for me, I keep my faith in sort of my wings and not the branch. And I also take a lot of inspiration from history, right? From past struggles, right? Like I was in a lot of the sort of AIDS protests, in the early '90s and onward, right? Like today, I saw Representative Sarah McBride say that she wasn't going to fight the bathroom ban that the Republicans are going to put in the Capitol, and just thinking about bathrooms sort of through history, right? Like for the longest time there weren't even bathrooms for women because they shouldn't be out in society anyways, and so there was a fight for women's bathrooms, right? This may not be all chronologically correct, but right, Then we get fights for bathrooms for black folks. Then we get fight for bathrooms for gay folks. That gay folks should be able to use the bathroom. People with disabilities, now trans folks. So like, there are all these methods that have been used over the years to get bathroom access. And that's just one example. There's so many other examples that we can pull from. And so like, yeah, looking back there and finding tactics and seeing what's worked and what we can borrow from.
Real quick, I just wanted to capitalize, it sounds weird to say, but bring up one of the things that Kathy mentioned. For folks in the room, just to be aware, if you don't know how to point with your lips, you should learn, especially being able to say that stuff's over there. I'm not the best, don't worry. I have relatives that are better. I can introduce you to them if you need to. So, folks playing at home on the panel, I want to be true to my word and give a little bit of time for people to actually be able to see the resource tables and be able to chat and be in community. So, if it's okay with y'all, I want to ask you one last question. This is going to blend two of them, but just if you have any resources that you would want to share for folks to be aware of, resources for support, and that could be in person or online. And also, if there's one thing that you would want to share with folks to show up for TGNC folks, what would that be? And take a moment to think about it. Nomi, we will start with you just to make this easy.
Question?
What can folks do to show up for our community? And I'm going to say our community just because all of us up here are some form of transgender queer people.
Yeah, okay. Resources, will Sean or you, could we send them to you?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Maybe you
If
collect some stuff?
if you want to share any resources verbally,
Sure.
go for it. Sean
Yeah.
is being our lovely cameraman behind the scenes tonight. And if you come up with anything else that you want to share as well, please feel free just to share that with both of us, and then we can share it out on Facebook, social media, things like that, so folks can have it out. Sorry, can have access. When you don't have water and you talk a lot,
Just spray whatever that is.
Don't do
I'm
it.
sure that's fine.
It's not
Blue.
safe. Don't do it.
It's like Baja Blast. Yeah. I'm going to think about resources. For some reason,
That's
I'm
okay.
blanking. But I will say, and I want folks to know, so folks in Duluth, right, like we've got a Human Rights Commission. I'm the vice chair on that. If you're getting discriminated against for in whatever way, like reach out to us. What we do is that we investigate those things. So if you're getting discriminated against, reach out to us. Please let us know. Superior has, I'm gonna blank on the name, but it's like ethnic. There's also a city council, and I chat with folks who are on that, and then can't wait that I can't remember their name, meaning the name of their committee. But like you all have similar stuff here as well. So you have those resources, and then of course, like again, I'll share some resources as I think about them. In terms of standing up, like I think for me the thing that I want is more normalization, right? So I feel like this is the thing that I say to everybody is like, I hate being in a meeting and being the last person to go and be like, oh yeah, these are my pronouns. I would just love it if early on people got used to just saying their pronouns, because then, it just, it creates, I feel like it creates a dynamic, maybe it's in my own head. But I would just love for people to go with pronouns. I would love for people to, I think that's the one that always comes to mind.
For resources, I'm going to fall back on something I used a lot when I worked with youth, and that's TSER, Trans Student Educational Resources. They're the youngsters. They got it going. Read their stuff and apply it as you have the opportunity to do so. And then I'd say a joy resource, go to the Asher House. It's an animal sanctuary blog. Or actually it has little videos, and find Matilda. Matilda has cerebellar hypoplasia, and man, life is hers. You gotta watch Matilda run down the trail. And then I'd say for messages for those who want to support our community, do your homework and listen, and identify better when you should stop and listen.
So for resources, I work for Outfront Minnesota. I recommend checking out our table. We have an anti-violence program, so we have an anti-violence hotline. We have an education and equity team. We have a policy and organizing team. There's just so much, and so Chance is at the table, and Chance can tell you everything. But I think ways to show up, and I think especially specifically talking as a musical organizer or a musician is show up to events hosted by trans people or gender non-conforming people. Mutual aid is huge. I highly recommend donating to transgender folk when you can. And yeah, it's just listening, pretty much what Kathy said. Just just listen.
Resources, really great resource. Together for Youth, queer support group for teenagers, youth. There's queer support groups all around. I found a lot of mine through Instagram, just putting in hashtag #TwoSpirit, finding a lot of my friends that way, gradually reaching out. I would say normalize pronouns again, but I also hear in the meetings and all their pronouns are very heteronormative, and I'm like, I'm both. And then the room gets quiet, and I'm like, oh no! Now we're awkward, okay? So just being kind towards each other, but again, supporting queer artists, going to drag shows, supporting the drag artists, supporting when you go to, I don't know, Pride, please support artists, supporting artists. That's my main thing is an artist myself, just economic support is a huge thing when it comes to supporting families and community members.
Yeah, resources, would love to just put out there that I think there's a lot of fear that a lot of us are holding moving into the future about access to our own healthcare, and want to say that there are some amazing anarchist queer trans healers in our own community and globally who have been preparing for this, and I'd be happy to chat with folks. If you're fearing lack of access to hormones, plants have natural hormones that we can utilize, and they're not going to be at the same levels as pharmaceuticals, but we have these resources in nature, and many of these plants grow right here. They're phytoestrogens that are found in nature. These are resources that queer and trans herbalists have been prepping for years, and passing these secrets between each other because herb schools won't teach it. People don't know about it. Doctors think it's bullshit. But it's real and very powerful, and want to just put out there that I'm happy to chat with folks about that or connect folks to other queer trans healers. There's some really powerful trans femme folks doing this work and doing this community research, especially an herbalist named Ayelet Harsher, who runs an organization called the Flower Tops Clinic out of Brooklyn, New York. And super happy to connect y'all to Ayelet or talk to you about local resources for that. And then an in-person offering along those lines. This Sunday from noon to 4, there's an event called the Queer Healers Pop-Up, and it's all queer trans-identified body workers and energy workers who are hosting a healing event for our community. These folks are offering services at way cheaper than they would ever offer it in other settings, because it's really a gift to queer community. Nobody's going to be turned away for lack of funds. There's going to be massage therapy, an herb clinic, a healing movement, all accessibility, welcome dance session, a dreamwork circle, a Reiki healer, and all of these folks are part of our community and wanting to offer these gifts. So please, please, please come if you can. We have flyers on the table out there for that. Yeah, and I think I'll just echo again, for folks wanting to support queer, trans, two-spirit, gender non-conforming community. Like, put your money where your mouth is. Like, really send your money to mutual aid asks. Pay attention when folks are sharing fundraisers for gender-affirming care. Like, no one in our community should be going into tens of thousands of dollars of debt for basic health care, and that's the reality. Like, freely give to those folks if you have the ability, and like, don't ask a lot of questions. Don't feel like you are entitled to ask people about their transition or their body or their identity and nitty-gritty details just because you sent them $20. Like, just give what you can and support folks. And like, want to echo what Bird and Khayman said, like, follow mutual aid efforts and contribute to them and support our queer and trans artists in our community field.
Well, you guys said it all. No, I'm just kidding. For resources, and this is going to be piggybacking off of hormones, as a trans individual, I'm terrified for hormones and stuff. I am just trying to get back on cycle. I don't want to be off cycle. Okay, it's a lot, and it's a lot on us. So, make sure you talk to your doctors, talk to your healthcare providers, and try to work out what you can work out, first and foremost. That's what I'm going to do. There's local places like the Women's Health Clinic down here in Duluth. They are very lovely, very sweet, and there's also Planned Parenthood in Duluth as well, and that's where I personally go to. They are also very sweet and very kind. And also, if like money or insurance things, talk to them, they'll help you figure it out. Like, that's what I'm saying, use those resources, because if they don't have the exact answer for you, they can guide you to the right answer, if that makes sense. And I just want us to also, like, piggybacking on what you said, let me find it. I haven't found it. Piggybacking on the hormones, that also goes like what name changes and stuff like that. I am also going to be in the process of legally changing my name, but this is the time to start acting on those things which you can do. January is going to be a very scary month, okay? So make sure you can do what you can to make sure you're good and you feel like yourself and how you want to be, Like, make sure you do those things. Those are very, very important. What was that question?
Anything that you would suggest, just action items for people to show up for the community?
Easy. Okay. So there's a lot of different queer, trans, all that events going on in the Twin Ports. Showing up is really the biggest thing, you can do. It's the most impactful thing you can do. But I also understand being able to go to these events, it's hard. We also have our own stuff that we have to deal with, our own mental health, but we also have work, family, all these things. So even if you're showing love online to that event, or even sharing that event, and that goes with art events, drag shows, dance classes, anything, you can be a little bit more supportive, especially during these days. Our community is everything. Us as trans people, we're going to take care of each other. Us as queer people, we're going to take care of each other. We're going to stand up for each other. So let's support each other in these events and show up for each other and show that we're here. No matter how tough it is, we ain't going nowhere, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Also, the Women's Health Clinic now calls itself the We Health Clinic.
It's called
The We Health Clinic?
We Health, period.
Yeah. In case you're like typing Google Maps and you're like, where's that?
That part.
There's also a
You don't
crisis
stop us.
pregnancy center just across the road.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, in case you're like, I don't know where that is.
Right.
We don't want to send you to the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
Well, I apologize for being a little bit behind time when I was expecting, but can we get a round of applause for the beauty and the brilliance of these folks?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. And take some time now, go check out the resource tables. There might still be some sandwiches over in the GERC, Gender Equity Resource Center, right across the hall. And there's also some coloring sheets if you want to take some time. If you've loved this event, I'm T. Wainman, and if you've hated this event, I am either a poplar or a birch tree. You choose. Be nice, Trace. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.